tens of thousands of Americans dying from fentanyl overdose each year. Because, folks, in California, Governor Newsom has activated the National Guard to deal with this. Fentanyl. It's that bad that Newsom, of all people, has activated the National Guard to deal with it. But let me show you, this is no longer a partisan issue. This is both Republicans and Democrats realizing the crisis is beyond the breaking point. Daily Wire: Newsom directs National Guard to combat San Francisco's fentanyl crisis. It says Governor Gavin Newsom directed the state National Guard and California Highway Patrol to help in the fight against fentanyl trafficking in San Francisco. Those of you not familiar with the system as well, the National Guard is like a state military, and it's largely, to an extent, under the control of the governor. In America is a very unique country in that we have 50 states, each of which has its own laws, its own constitution, its own government, its own leadership, and even its own military, independent of the federal government, which also has a government, military, and so on. The National Guard is the state military, although not as large as, of course, the federal military, but still pretty large. It used to be strictly under state control. The governor controls it to a large extent. But that was changed where the National Guard has some degree of federal control because of the war on terror and different agreements they made with that. And so it's been changed a bit, but just explaining briefly how that whole thing works. But Governor Newsom has activated the National Guard now. And it says, as part of a new partnership, the agencies are tasked with identifying personnel and resources to assist San Francisco following a 41% spike in fentanyl overdose deaths in the first few months of this year. And Newsom said this: "We are providing more law enforcement resources and personnel to crack down on a crime linked to the fentanyl crisis, holding the poison peddlers accountable, and increasing law enforcement presence to improve public safety and public confidence in San Francisco," Newsom said in a statement on Friday. It says Newsom's office said the collaboration, which also includes the San Francisco Police Department and the San Francisco District Attorney's Office, will be focused on drug suppliers and traffickers, rather than seeking to criminalize those struggling with substance abuse in a city that has recorded several hundred accidental overdose deaths annually in recent years. In other words, you can still buy your fentanyl, you can still take your fentanyl and do it on the streets and pass out in front of Starbucks, or in Starbucks, for that matter, in San Francisco, which will not kick many people out, or in a McDonald's bathroom, which has also become a big problem in New York, by the way. So if you're taking your fentanyl on the street and doing drugs in front of kids and stuff, that's still apparently okay in like California and actually New York too. You can see it on the street here. But the people who are selling it, who are making a profit off that, they're going to be the ones they're going after. Now, generally, I'm saying this half joking because it's so broken, but frankly. But I support going after people selling poison to people. And fentanyl is poison. Fentanyl is killing more Americans every year than most of the wars we've fought in our history. Tens of thousands of Americans are dying every year from this. This is coming to a large extent from China. It turns out now they're actually manufacturing a lot of this in Mexico. The drug cartels are killing Americans. Remember the drug war? This goes back to Mao Zedong, who wanted to create what he called people's opium. And he modeled this after the Opium Wars the British launched against China before, of course, the fall of the last dynasty. Great book on that would be Red Cocaine by Joseph Douglas, which I mentioned several times before. For the Chinese Communist Party, drug warfare is written as one of the methods of unconventional war in the book Unrestricted Warfare. This is a stated form of war against America by the Chinese Communist Party. And yes, they work with the Mexican cartels. They supply many of the guns through Norinco. They do the money laundering through what they call the Vancouver model. They supply the precursor chemicals, and they also supply directly a lot of the synthetic drugs. And so this is the CCP being the real cartel, and the Mexican cartels being the foot soldiers of the CCP, poisoning and killing Americans at the behest of the Chinese Communist Party. So I am very much against fentanyl. case in point. And I see this as a war against, the people I love, frankly. It says Newsom's office said the collaboration, which also includes the San Francisco Police Department and the San Francisco District Attorney's Office, will be focused on drug suppliers and traffickers rather than seeking out the people taking the drugs again. It says the agreement will lead to the formation of a new collaboration operation between all four agencies focused on dismantling fentanyl trafficking and disrupting the supply of a deadly drug in the city by holding the operators of large-scale drug trafficking operations accountable, the governor's office said. Newsom paid a visit on Wednesday to San Francisco, a city he once led as mayor, and surveyed the Tenderloin neighborhood, which has been hit hard by crime and the fentanyl crisis. The trip took place a couple weeks after San Francisco Mayor London Breed requested federal assistance to arrest and prosecute drug dealers while the city contended with the short-staffed police department, according to local ABC affiliate KGO. Now, while I do agree in going after fentanyl traffickers and stopping this whole thing, I will say also that this is a problem manufactured by bad policy in the first place. Police could handle this. If police were allowed to arrest drug criminals, which were mostly legalized under these cities in New York and California, and also because of the massive swinging open the door for illegal immigration into the United States, we wouldn't have these problems. If officials were representing the interests of the people that they are elected to serve, you wouldn't have these problems. If they were protecting the lives of Americans, you wouldn't have these problems. If they were protecting innocent people rather than criminals, and there was not defund the police, you would not have these problems. I mean, you'd have it to an extent. New York City, case in point, under Giuliani had the broken glass policies, but they went after every crime. And New York went from being a very violent, very dangerous city in the 90s to being a very safe one, in the early 2000s and the mid-2000s. I moved to New York in 2006, and it was a great place. And you can see how the defund the police policies and the removal of most of these laws that allowed them to go after criminals have destroyed the city. So, again, you manufacture the problem, and then you create the solution. They created the problem, and they have to, because they created such a huge problem, go to extraordinary lengths to solve the problem they created.